Hello again. Welcome back to another episode of The Works. I'm Jim.
I'm Diane.
Since we last talked, I wanted to talk more about AI, but we've got some interesting other episodes and ideas that we've been working on and kind of want to promote. Today we want to talk about AI, and in particular how, the title is going to be AI is BS. I think we've covered the concept of AI before, and not necessarily my prejudice towards.
Right.
There are a lot of good things about AI. Remember web search and autonomous vehicles, and
right, and the different types of
virtual
AI,
assistants.
yeah.
Yes. Now I'm talking though in general.
AI and the need for data centers.
Well, yeah, and we'll get into that. But some things that we have been talking about that to help with momentum. You know, some of the, I guess some of the stars that I try to not necessarily emulate, but have given me hope that since everyone's doing podcasts, even an AI podcaster apparently, got to listen to that crap. But if you have a theme or a thing, you know, like with Josh and Mama, they do cooking stuff.
Right. They
So
have a lane that they stay in.
And it's easy for them to keep coming up. And we don't want to necessarily, you know, it's not that it's not topical. We certainly could talk about things that have just happened or in the news and yada, yada, yada. But that doesn't really distinguish or set us apart. So we're looking at, and yes, how this whole industry, in my opinion, kind of blossomed around the idea of true crime, right? The crime solving podcasters.
Yeah.
I mean, hell, Netflix. Well, no, it's not. Is it Netflix? Who's got the damn series, the Murders in the Building thing? That's Netflix, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Or is that Hulu? I don't know.
But you know what I'm talking about.
The only Murders in the Building, and they were doing their own podcast.
Yeah. Right, and that's Hulu. But the genre of murder and mystery, you know, crime,
Mm-hmm.
right? True crime is interesting. It's fun, and it seems to have a, you know, say limitless amount of content,
Right.
but it's captivating. We've been listening to, when we kind of hinted this last time at Varnum Town. When we went to the Outer Banks, there's a little township burb called Varnum Town, and there's a whole mystery behind their involvement with
Pablo Escobar.
Yeah, and smuggling cocaine and drugs and all that stuff
In the 80s.
in the 80s, and you know, fascinating, and you know, that podcast is doing pretty well. It's got some famous guy from Twin Peaks,
Yeah.
doing it, but you know, and at the same time, I'm not envious of these folks that are doing this, because I think we could do it a lot more interesting and better. But so we're gonna tackle some other things that well, for example, in our backyard, there's a movie that came out
Mastermind.
5 years ago,
Yeah.
Mastermind, that had to do with the Wells Fargo heist, the
Right.
biggest heist robbery in American history. But what made it a little different was the uniqueness of it was done from stealing money from Wells Fargo. Well, not Wells Fargo, excuse me, the company Loomis Fargo, which was the company that, you know,
the security trucks.
yeah, these trucks that go around.
The
And
money
so,
trucks.
and it's interesting because, you know, these guys weren't necessarily the smartest ones in the bunch, but they did enough research to realize that the maximum amount of time that they could do, based on the fact that they robbed an entity.
And they did not use weapons.
Exactly. That it was, and the guy, you know, that was in this is from our area. And
Right.
so we're going to start, we've started asking questions from those that are maybe not wanting to be associated with those folks, but it makes a hell of a...
We figure, why not track it down? We're local.
Yeah, it could be a good podcast series that we might be doing. Another one that I'd come up with recently is government failures. And in particular, looking at things over time. And this is how we're going to tie, here comes the segue. So unlike with AI, where AI has seemingly caught hold or had gotten its legs, or as the corporate CEOs and CFOs like to say, they lean into this concept of AI. The government hasn't really adopted AI like corporate America has adopted, or even, foreign companies. But one of the things that I was thinking that we could do a series on would be government failures, which, by the way, we were talking in our last episode about the Intercoastal Waterway.
Yeah.
Which was a huge thing that helped us win the war.
Right.
So we could hide our U-boats from Germany because they were watching the shores. But oddly enough, there in the 30s, I can't remember what president, but it'll be part of our series. One of the presidents proposed a canal that connected the Gulf with the Atlantic through Florida. Why, I have no idea. And up until George W. Bush, this was an actual government program still in the works. Billions of dollars spent to cut.
And they didn't even attempt to cut.
How many people
Where
know?
did that
Well, no,
money
they did. There's evidence, there's remnants of this. But how many people knew of or know of the Marjorie Harris Carr Cross Florida Greenway?
Never heard of it.
Yeah, and it's part of where, again, initially this was to cut out a swath of land so that boats could go from
through
the
instead
Atlantic
of going
to the Gulf. Instead of
going all the way around. Yeah.
All the way around what? Florida?
Yeah.
No, it's not like it's going all the way around the frickin' South America.
Right.
But that's a whole other. So, yeah, we're kind of going to dive into that and to your point about data centers. But here's my segue. So, my prediction, we're going to title this AI is BS. I predict that sometime late this year, early 2027, AI will, the fad that we know of everything being the AI on your effing phone. How many times do I have to stop Gemini?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to ask
I don't know
Gemini.
what buttons I'm pushing.
Yeah.
And Gemini, what would you like to do? And it looks like it's wanting to talk or engage with you orally. Well, that's a whole other topic. But no, you know what I mean. So the AI has been shoved down our throats, not from the other things, from the assistance and, spell check and your car's driving. But I'm talking about in general and more haphazardly being thrown into corporate America. Let's face it, this year, 2026, we've just come off of the first quarter. How many companies have been laying people off? Why? And their answer is, again, the corporate mantra is, we want to look into AI.
Right, to do the jobs.
Right. And here's my point about the whole government thing. So unless the government, which has boundless, endless oodles of money, nothing really catches on. And I'll give you an example when it comes to computers, right? And I think this, again, kind of, let's face it, if it wasn't for the computer, the birth of AI would not have occurred, right?
Right.
So in the 50s, the government started to purchase this thing called the mainframe. No company that I'm aware of, and I did some research, the companies that were getting computers would invest in them more from let's do the mundane, let's do the repetitive things. Yes, they would buy a mainframe, but not many companies could afford a mainframe. The government, however, tons of mainframes in the 50s. And what were they mostly used for? NASA bought them, and the census bought them. And the census bought them because they needed to store things like population and all the things that the census does, right? Mm-hmm. So this, again, to me, it's interesting. So business was very slow to adopt this technology of computers. So I'm liking it to, I'm making a metaphor with AI. So yeah, businesses, unlike the government, didn't spend nearly as much money on mainframes and computers back in the 50s when that technology thing became a thing. Well, let's face it, if it wasn't for the mainframes, NASA would never have gotten to the moon.
Wink.
Whole other issue. But no, my point is that unless the government's behind it, and government acceptance of AI since the beginning in 2023, when AI became kind of that thing, has gone from 3% to 3.5%, 4% acceptance across the board. Now, of course, this begs the question: did AI make the metric to measure acceptance? I've looked into this, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. So, back to my building of the story. So, government in the 50s brought on mainframes, spent money. They started to see business started to take note. And so 70s and 80s come around. And of course, the government was putting computers on desks now for the first time. We didn't have just the computer operator, the mainframe geek sitting in the air-conditioned room that was a floor and a half higher than the rest of the floor, right? It seemed to be raised because of all the wires. But so in the 70s, 80s, you got business saying, oh, there's something to this mainframe thing the government's using. And so all of a sudden, much like the government, business now was starting to purchase computers for those knowledge workers, for those special people. Just like in the government, computers weren't on everyone's desk. That didn't happen until what? 90s.
Yeah.
Everyone got a computer. And it, from a government perspective, they were certainly moving more towards things now being, quote, online. The government in the 90s was starting to take what computers were doing behind the scenes, whether it's making checks for Social Security, again, continuing this thing with NASA and all the, computations that mainframe computers can do. And all of a sudden now business realizes, well, hey, second, there is something to these computers. And let's face it, we all know about Bill Gates and how Microsoft started and IBM and OS2 and their version of DOS. But my point is that government was behind that whole technology thing. So as I was alluding to the how are we coming up with the notion, and from 2023 to now, the, quote, adoption of AI from a government perspective has gone from 3.5% to 4 or 5% adoption across, in these last 5 years. But from a business perspective, it's gone from 5% to 45% adoption. And most of that leap happened the first 2 quarters of this year. And of course, again, maybe I'm being conspiracy theorist, but let's compare what happened from a corporation perspective. All the money that they were going to spend on employees, they decided they're going to invest in AI. As they put it, the reason that they laid everyone off, because they wanted to look to AI.
Right.
Now, I beg you, much like robots were going to take care of and put all humans, out of work, computers were doing the same thing. But the reality is, much like with the computers as they were introduced into government and business, it took people to run them.
It did.
It took people to do programming for them. But that's what AI, supposedly the magic behind AI, it's going to undo all that. We're not going to need people, right?
Well, then how do you know it's done correctly? Where's the transparency? Where's the checks and balances? So if it doesn't do something right, what do you say? Oh, well, the computer did it. Or what did it do wrong? What did it do right? Where did it go wrong?
Well, so what
how do you as a person using it, how do you know it did it correctly?
Well, how are you interfacing with it? What are you doing, Hal? Right? I mean, so what's going on? So to answer your question, I guess, or let me bring back my topic of how does AI, and maybe AI is making this up, but how does AI measure how much AI is being used?
Right.
Because my favorite lines recently, and you see this a lot, is data-driven decisions. Okay. Like, nobody in the corporate world was making decisions based on information. They were just licking their finger, sticking it to the wind and decided, hey, let's...
throwing it at a dartboard.
Right. But, okay, so the statistic on AI adoption is based on number of licenses of AI sold. And what are the big ones? Copilot, et cetera, et cetera. My point is, the Copilot now is included in as a license in Office. How many effing Office licenses are sold to corporate America? Millions. So, is it really fair to say
that
everyone's using it when in reality it's part of Office? Much like a lot of these other AI, I'm just going to pick on Microsoft for a second. So, in 2023, Copilot was not a thing. 2024, 2025, last year Copilot became a thing. It was separate. And now Copilot is part of Office. And magically, we went from 20% to 45% adoption of Copilot. in the last 6 months.
I don't use it. It's on my computer, and I don't use it.
Well, that's not how they count.
I know.
Let's face it. We have all argued about how does Facebook count a view? How does YouTube count a view?
And what does a view mean? It doesn't mean it doesn't.
And what does a vote mean?
Right.
A vote could be a ceremony. That's a flashback from Veep. But I mean, truly, there is, and not to be semantic, but the definition of adoption, in this case, adoption means the use of or the purchase of a license.
Well,
so by default, yes, it's gotten this traction.
Because it's bundled in with Microsoft Office.
Okay. So, and I will forgo the negative undertone for a second. Say, okay, well, how bad could it be? Well, with Copilot, the 90% of the use of Copilot by individuals that have Office are using it to transcribe meetings. Last time I did this, I had a 2-hour meeting. It wasn't just my meeting, but it was a 2-hour meeting, 60 plus people, 80% of which were literally in the same room together. And one of the things that Copilot has been used for, from an AI perspective, is transcribing, meeting notes, which, yes, I guess it's taken us 50 years to do away with the secretary's role or a stenographer's role,
right?
Of
or
transcribing
whoever got assigned to scribe, yeah.
But one of the things that they pose as a kind of a neat, in a way it is. So you had 2 hours, 60 people talking, and what it likes to do at the end is provide you a summary. 2 sentences, 3 sentences of what happened in the meeting. And so in my meeting, I kid you not, 2 of the sentence was, blank, I'm not going to say their name, said, "Thank you for attending." That was one of the 3 sentences.
To summarize the meeting.
All this meeting, that's 33% of its power went into summarizing the meeting that was 2 hours long, 60 plus people.
To thank you.
Saying, "Mrs. Blah and Blah thanked all of us for attending." You're kidding me. So, one example. Another example that's being used, and I'm not going to say where, but I know personally, code review. So, you have these AI code bots sniffing through code. And I remind you, much like grammar or writing a sentence, code can be syntactically correct. However, there have been more bugs introduced into production because of these AI reviews, because it's looking for what? It's looking for syntactically correct.
Yeah.
Much like, again, my analogy is things can be written grammatically correct. Sifting through code, making sure that it was either compiled correctly, that syntactically it's correct. Well, but let's face it, it's not, that doesn't convey the rule, the business inference. That's like saying, hey, I wrote this report. What do you, and by God forbid, if you ever ask anybody, what do you do with this report? What kind of data-driven decisions are you making? And they look at you, well,
I can make it into a brooch or a pterodactyl.
That, or it's, you hate to pose a question to anyone in that position, because then they somewhat, or maybe it's just me and my style, they get upset that I'm intruding on what it is they're doing. In fact, that I'm just trying to help them make that data-driven decision. So we're using AI for transcribing, which is BS.
Right.
It's not working.
Or
we're
code
using
review. Well, when you compile your program, that's what the compiler does. If it's written, it'll compile. Doesn't mean it's doing what it's supposed to do. So what is the AI doing?
Sorry. And part of my problem is I'm old, and code is compiled. Code isn't compiled today because it's all basically English, and there's no real. So to your point,
it checks syntax to make sure. It'll throw up errors if something isn't correct.
Well, yeah, if indeed it goes through a machine compiler to, that all arguments are present. If you're calling a function, it doesn't work like that today. The code is written with a click, click, click. There's no, and that generates,
right.
The thing that you can review, and then AI seemingly has no concept. So that's 2 things right away that, in my opinion, it's BS. That AI is going to solve everyone's problems, and again,
it's just going to make us all stupider, as I say wrongly.
Well,
more stupid.
But so if you think about it, it's now we just saw a freaking episode on AI where the fictitious scenario of a service that's going to write jokes for you for a wedding. This is Hacks.
Yeah.
And the AI component was that somebody was wanting to have a comedian feed lines to AI. AI will then take and again, it's pure mass. It's nothing but the ability, and I hate to say that, what a mainframe does is the ability to store lots of information. And now we have processors that can do it so much and can get through this so much faster. Right, you don't need to program a punch card to talk to a mainframe to have it do something. Right. We've gotten more sophisticated than that. My point is, like with these AI learned, this learning that goes on with AI. I'm half convinced that Google, web searching was nothing more than this in disguise. Have you ever, I hate to say this, how many times has anyone else put something into Google or ask Jeeves or any of them, right? I'm kidding. But who's put something in when they're researching something that was an idea that they had? And sure as shit, a year from now, that becomes a thing. You and I had that experience with BizFracking. When we applied for our patent, we looked to see if anyone else, and that's part of a patent search when you apply, is has anyone else applied for or have patented this concept of, in our case, it was photo stitching from various sources, many sources, autonomous sources, images, video, etc., to recreate a scene
at a certain
date and time. And sure enough, location. And Microsoft came up with something very similar that they then within 6 months. So is it not fair to say that Google and all these other search engines are doing nothing but scraping
people's
ideas and turning them into something? That's not really AI. That's just stealing.
Yeah.
It's plagiarism. What it ultimately amounts to. Yeah, so that in my opinion, I don't think, I guess I put it this way, unless something comes about that these folks that are using Copilot or any of these other tools in their day-to-day, it's neat at first to have something new to use.
Play with.
It's a new tool. It's like,
or
when you got your Trapper Keeper.
Yeah.
Or as an
how
adult.
To organize things, yeah.
Well, yeah, and who was the big thing as an adult? Covey, when you got your
Franklin Covey
when you got
planner.
your brand new Franklin Covey planner.
Oh, and how that was exciting.
Yeah, that lasted for me from January the 1st to about the 5th, and then I gave up. But the little holders were kind of, it's like a Trapper Keeper. It was a Trapper Keeper for adults.
For grown-ups. But, some of these tools, I can see, if you're in a hurry and you don't want to read an entire document, that it reads it and gives you, what are my takeaways? But
does it do it right?
But no, it might not. And then what happens to your brain that you no longer have the ability to read something and figure out what it says? You're waiting to be told things. I even saw kids on the street. They don't even call their mom. They talk to the phone and say, "Call mom."
And so I go back to the whole government supporting of this. So it will never happen in this country unless government has got some vested interest in it, because that's where the real money is. All these other companies that are trying to do this, that have talked about, have done this, in essence, have cheapened out. What they used to spend on R&D, they've now decided to not spend on the employees that were actually performing a function and task, but to give it to something that they think can perform that task. And that's going to bite them in the ass. There's absolutely nothing proven. And then, in my opinion, to help support this, much like what we've done for the last couple of generations, there's an education system to support what's happening in the real world. Why did this country decide that it wanted to teach trigonometry and geometry to its students in the 40s and 50s? Why? Because Russia was doing that. We were afraid that they were going to beat us to the space race. And so much like they're teaching their kids trig and algebra and geometry or whatever.
Right now it's that China is doing all this data collection and they have AI data centers. So we want to keep up with what China does. And do we really want to surveil our people like they do? Do we really need all these data centers?
Well, okay. And data center is just another word for mainframe. It's one place to hold all of your shit, isn't it?
Right. Why do we need so many?
Well, but I guess the thing is, it's why are we finally coming around to accepting the mainframe's the thing, right? I mean, is it not? Our quote smartphones are nothing without a connection to the mainframe.
Right. To the cloud. To the
it's
internet.
The mainframe.
Yeah.
It's the same. So, but my point with, if government doesn't have a vested stake or interest, or in a way, I hate to say leading this, not that I expect them to lead this, because let's face it, government hasn't done technology very well. Healthcare.gov, remember that failure?
Ooh.
I mean, how many other failures can we bring up the government from, and I'm not saying from a technology perspective, that's not their thing. My point is that they have to, there's been no money truly invested in this concept of AI. And so the fact that you've got corporations that have far exceeded the spend from a government's perspective, it to me, there's not going to be any support for it. So back to your point, if indeed China is supporting this with their kids, that means they're teaching their kids the technology around what AI and how to use it, how to data mine it. Because it's one thing, like we've said, again, conspiracy theories. Langley had all these mainframes back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s sitting in their basement. And so that they had them trained that in any phone call at any moment, when somebody uttered the word assassination or president or whatever other key words,
it would record it and store it.
Exactly. Now, again, you'd have to have some horsepower to do that. In essence, we've almost made that simple for the government, if indeed you want to believe in that, because we got Alexa in our house, we got microphones everywhere, we've got cameras everywhere. I mean, let's face it. And government, we keep hearing these stories about how this attempt has been thwarted. And I mean, how do you think that they find that out? They don't have undercover. I mean, and maybe I'm wrong. But so, yeah, this, in my opinion, this notion of AI sticking around, I think it's done the damage. And I think it will continue to do this unspoken damage, especially when it comes to the workforce and the fact that we're really not seeing any benefits. As a matter of fact, I think the latest trend is that people are now getting AI interviews, the ones that have lost their jobs because of layoffs from AI. What's the irony? Now you're getting interviewed by the son of a bitch to lay you off. No, F you. I'm not going to talk to you.
Yeah.
What's the point? Because you can't get past them.
Right.
Or at least help me understand what you're looking for. But
there's no schmoozing an AI interview.
Well, I'm not. It's a personality thing, certainly. Right. And I thought people. I mean, you heard corporations
you want somebody.
You'd hire somebody that has potential. Now you're hiring AI that has quote potential, but no personality or no demonstrated ability to actually do anything.
Right. Well, you built your teams based on personality, because if you all have the same personality type, that team doesn't work.
Well, okay. So corporate America has just proven that you don't need a degree, because if it just hired a bunch of people that have absolutely no experience to do everything that everybody that had experience and degrees did, what's the point?
Right.
I mean, AI is going to do it. It bothers me when you get this speak that makes it sound like it's such a good. I made the comment about, you hear it in television commercials, it's data driven. Decisions that are made data driven. And of course, the word AI happens to appear somewhere in that sentence around data driven. What the hell does that actually mean? So I'm trying to come up with my own little stupid metaphor so before any of this stuff, before computers, we sold cars in this country, right?
Mm-hmm.
How did Ford GM decide that they were going to make X number of red cars, X number of blue cars, X number of Mustangs versus Pintos versus Corolla. What data did they have to make those decisions? Oh, no.
It wasn't AI.
No, well, it wasn't. Hell, there was no data. I mean, really?
You had your sales reports.
Well, certainly.
And you could trend forecast.
Yes, but I'll even give you a cute story. And I don't know the name of so we all knew one of the things that as we were up in the 70s and 80s, and the import was kind of that it was the better version of an American car in many cases, right? But it also stood for not U.S. And so you didn't want to get a import.
Right.
But Honda changed a lot of that.
Right.
Honda changed a lot of that because of the way the plant is run, and much like, and forgive me, it's not a Latin term, but there's the Chinese, Japanese, the non-Americans that were the Honda people. They ran their plants a certain way. There was a term that they used, and so it wouldn't be like with Ford. They'd have a line producing red cars and green cars and blue cars. They'd basically have a line set up that would produce certain types of vehicle models, and then they'd send them somewhere to go get painted. And each one would have, they had 3 down that were blue, 3. But Honda didn't do that. They built efficiencies in how they automated things. So one day it was the blue day. One day it was the red day. So anyway, my point is that all these decisions, though, we used to make them and stand behind them. And yes, maybe some of those decisions were bad, like in the car company. And, maybe there were extra yellow ones sitting on the lot. But then, you know what happened? Somebody made a decision saying, I want to have a sale on the yellow ones.
Right.
I didn't need a goddamn computer to tell me that.
Right.
I'm looking out in my inventory. I got a whole bunch of baby shit yellows.
So
maybe next year I'm not, and maybe next year
I won't make
any of those. But someone stood up with some balls or a vagina and said, I'm going to make a decision.
Right. Well, what happens now when AI makes these decisions and it's a wrong one? Because it's bound to happen. Who gets fired?
Well, I gave you
whose head is going to roll.
I still give you the example of
you're just going to stand up there and shrug and say, "Oopsies."
Well, so AI has told us that based on adoption, and again, the word adoption means the license is sold for AI. That does, and I hate to say, doesn't mean people are actually using it. They just got it, right? So all of a sudden, now that Microsoft has Copilot in Office, and we all know corporations spend money, licenses on Office
and Teams.
And so, and what it actually is, it's not AI. It's some smartass in the back saying, you know what? I can make AI sales look better because they know how they know the strike zone.
Gaming the system.
They know, and we've talked about gaming the system, but they know how to manipulate the data to tell the story that they want to tell.
Right.
Now, there's nothing wrong with that. Other than if you're trying to get out a narrative that's false, right? By saying, in the yellow car example, well, we don't want to sell to the yellow car people anyway. We don't want to sell that's why we're not going to make any yellow cars next year or whatever, right? It's just, again, it's a decision. And so that brings me, I guess, to a conclusion, or at least that's my case. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So that's my prediction, is that we will finally get another or enough either information or lack thereof to make this whole corporate AI thing a resounding failure, much like Enron or any other. I mean, that's another one.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my. Yeah, that would be, and that's, I guess, not part of my corporate failure series that we could talk about, but, oh, yeah, I mean, technically, Enron was a corporate failure, or it was a government failure, because the amount of money that they sunk into them towards the end to keep them afloat, knowing that, hey, they had the natural gas market, and plus a lot of other things. Boy, that's a fun story. So, yeah. So yeah, we're I guess regale you with thoughts of. We're going to dive deeper into the Loomis Fargo heist because we keep thinking that somewhere in our backyard there's still a couple $1,000,000.
Right, that they hid in the blue barrels.
Yeah, that's a great movie and a great book.
The book is called The Heist.
The Heist, the movie, classic SNL BS movie. Really, it was
funny, loosely based on
but yeah, and
still
cleverly enough filmed around the areas that we have, and I think we did hint to this that the realtor in that movie, we ended up using her as our realtor.
Yeah. I was busy loud talking about the movie and the book, and she's like, well,
and that's one of the things that, and we plan on reaching back out to, her husband at the time wasn't her husband at the time, but he
was chief of police. Mm-hmm.
They ended up having a little thing. It just, we've started to have those conversations.
He still has a band off of one of the stacks of money.
But yeah, the movie's worth watching, and I think we certainly can give. I think that'll make for a neat series if we decided to do that. I think it would be fun to talk about that, and maybe, like I said, put more of a local flair on it because supposedly they had money before, and because they ultimately knew because they blew it, they were spending too much money too quickly on everything, and they knew it, and they were starting to hide money. And Gant, who was the mastermind, or at least he was the linchpin behind the whole thing. He wasn't really the mastermind, if you will. Again, clever name, but for the movie. And he's been out
doing his
thing, and one might beg the question: is where'd you get all the money? I mean, so there's still some hints. There's still some hints, and conspiracy theories that there might be, barrels. Because it's funny around here what these blue barrels are for, like rainwater storage,
mm-hmm.
and making shine.
Put your mash in it.
Yeah. And if you watch the movie, you'll know what we're talking about. And then, like I said, a whole series on government project failures, and one in particular that I had no idea we tried to do not necessarily an intercoastal waterway, but the cut a canal, literally cutting Florida.
Yeah, I got to look into that. That's
I find that amazing. But hopefully, let's get to that and have more things for all of us to
talk about,
listen and talk about. So until next time, this is Jim.
I'm Diane,
and this has been another episode of The Works.